You're on the couch, tripping with Dr. Pete.
What is it to have a hard conversation? I gotta say, communication, they say, is just the central, most important part of relationships. And I tell you, the hard conversations, those are the ones that get you. It's like when the hard conversation happens, the emotion rises and you get lost. All of a sudden, it becomes all about ego, right? It's no longer about like this union. There's no more we. It's me versus you. And that's like the issue number one, right? When it goes from a we thing to a me versus you thing, there's a problem there, folks. So we're going to talk a little bit today when we get started. We're going to start talking about communication in relationships, how to have difficult conversations, and how to keep the couple first. So many times, I mean, I've been through it. I've been divorced. I'm remarried. Oh, get in there. Yo, I gotta say, so I'm remarried I'm 45, and my fiance, well, my wife, what am I saying, my fiance? My wife is 50 years old. And so, nope, she's 49. She'd kill me if she heard me say that. She's about to be 50. She'd kill me. She has 4 months, and let's enjoy these are her 40s, yo. It's happening right now, so we're enjoying it. So she's about to be 50. And we just got married. About a month and a half ago. And the funny thing is, right, this is so true, right? So many young people, they come into therapy and they talk about how it's over. Like they're like in their 20s and they're like, I can't find them. I'm probably never going to find. They just feel this sense of like hopelessness because like dating is miserable. It's miserable. And I get that. I really do get it. Dating is miserable. And they have what I would call dating fatigue. They're just really tired of trying to, like find their person. And in this digital kind of speed dating kind of massive net that they throw out for their current, online dating type of situation, you pull in a lot of bad fish, a lot of crabs, if you will, And and it's difficult because some of them are even bad. They're just not for you. You know what I mean? But what happens too with this dating thing is you get this real complex kind of paradox of choice. And we'll talk more about dating. I'll do a whole show on that. But I'll say this, people are tired of talking in the warm up part for it not to go anywhere. They're tired of telling their deepest parts. They're just exhausted and they're starting to feel hopeless. I got to tell you, folks, never lose hope. It's tough. It is. If you want to do marriage and you want to do a wedding, a family relationship, you want to do it right, it does take time, and it behooves you to take your time to get to know a person. One of the things that kind of gets in the way sometimes is emotion. And we're going to talk a little bit. Our focus is communication today. We're going to talk about how emotion gets involved in your communication and can negatively affect that too. But I'm going to really I want you to walk away with some skills today. I want you to say, I listened to Dr. Pete show. I'm going to listen to that show 4 or 5 times so I can become better for my partner. One of the things that we do in relationships, which is a trip, first of all, we lose hope, not just that we would find our partner, and I'm lucky that I found mine. And I did have questions about marriage, I tell you. We'll talk all about that. But you kind of can lose hope that the person you're going to be able to get through, and you can start to give up on communicating. You ever have that happen? Now, men, by research shows, men are more likely to stonewall. Now, what stonewalling is when you get into like an argument, you get upset or whatever, right? Like men will shut off. They'll stop talking. And this drives women. Now, we're talking typically. This drives women crazy. And they're like, how are you not going to say? Like, it's so painful. But men, for a number of reasons, some men say they pull back because they just need to kind of have some space. They're fearful of their anger. Some men are doing it in a kind of a passive aggressive way. I'm going to punish her because I know it drives her crazy for me to pull back. I'm going to teach her. Some men are just protecting themselves. They're pulling back because, they're kind of like they need to just not like talk. Talking is just too difficult. The stress is too difficult. A lot of time for men, what people don't understand is men, we deal with a whole bunch of emotions too. We just don't talk about it. So it's kind of like a cumulative effect on our psyche. And so we get to our capacity. We have too much going on. That's it. No more, right? The tipping point happens and we just shut down. Many men, many men. So this stonewalling, if you look at the research, stonewalling is like the number one predictor of divorce. Yeah, like when couples get into that space, when they jump into their corners, they've lost vision. And I'm telling you, I think hopelessness is underlying the stonewall. It just kind of don't believe that there's going to be any change. There's no way to influence my partner, no way to get through. You ever get that? Oh man, that feeling like if I go ahead and talk, what's going to happen is we're going to fight. Nobody wants that, right? I mean, who wants that, right? Who wants to feel like I'm gonna if I engage, it's gonna be beef. Nobody wants beef. Who wants beef, right? So we avoid. And avoidance becomes a style in a relationship. And I'll tell you, an avoidance style relationship, not healthy. Anxiety really becomes a part of it too, right? Because you become really kind of fearful of what happens when we disagree. That's not a good feeling, right? That if we disagree, it's going to go really bad. So I'm going to give you a couple of things that kind of say. First of all, just trust. You're not always going to agree. I think one of the things I've learned in this marriage versus my first marriage is when you disagree, stay kind of cool, like kind of have an expectation that it'll happen rather than being so thrown off by it. Don't let that disagreement be cumulative. Don't let it be like, oh, another agreement. I'm so sick of her. And then be mad about the whole resume of a relationship. That's what happens a lot of times, man. It's not just that you're mad about that moment, but you're mad about all the moments preceding it. It's a trip. It's a trip. And so what I'm saying to you is, kind of get into that space where you're like, I'm going to have this first argument right here. And you know what? It happened, went a little bad. I understand that bumps in the road. Do yourself the favor, come back and recover as quick as you can. But we're not going to spend too much time in just the argument because I also want to talk about having a hard conversation. I want to say this. First of all, you got to remember this. The essence of life is growth. I believe that. Becoming more. That's what it's all about. Becoming all that you possibly can become. That's what we're here for, right? That's the whole point of it. And so I extend that the essence of a relationship is to grow each other. Now, this is really important, right? Because when you look at that the whole point of being in a relationship is to add to each other, to grow each other, you will turn to each other for that reason. Because you say, I want to know what you think about me. What do you think? What do you think I'm missing about me? And curiosity automatically increases. And if you have a really good relationship, if you have a healthy relationship, if you love and truly trust your partner, not just say you trust, but truly trust your partner, you will want to hear what they have to say about you because you'll believe that they only want to see the best for you. Come on, folks. Come on, folks. Why would you be in a relationship where you don't think that person over there wants to see more from you? It's not in their benefit for you to be your lesser self. Trust them. The love demands it. It demands that you trust them and therefore turn to them and be curious, as Gottman would say, right? Be curious. And take that argument, turn it right into a conversation about growth points. How can I become more? What do you want me to understand? Now, here's the thing. When you do this, I'm going to give this to you. Now, I'm giving you this is my book here. So I'm giving you some good stuff here, right here. This is my title is called Agree to Agree. Yeah. How to always win an argument. How to always win in communication and relationships. This is it. This is all you got to do. And you'll never fight again. There is no reason, and I'm telling you this as a psychologist, there's really no reason for you to ever fight in your relationship. You should never really have to have a fight. Now, you're saying to me, yeah, an argument, a disagreement, perspectives will be different for sure. But there's really no reason for a fight. And so if you're fighting, something else is going on, right? So what I'm asking you to do is say to yourself, I am going to agree to agree. Now, here's rule number one. Write this down, get a piece of paper. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to agree before I say anything else. I'm going to find the thing that I can agree with before I give any other feedback. So I'm going to listen with a deep level of curiosity. I want to hear what are they saying and what can I agree with? Now, the next step in conversation becomes for you to tell them what they may be missing. So you agree with these points, but there's something that they're missing. And so now you give them that. You say, hey, but what I think you missed here is that, I do love you. I try really hard, but sometimes it's never good enough for you. It feels like my effort is always diminished. You're always criticizing me, never affirming me. So that's why sometimes I agree that I could try more. I could give you more effort. I could spend more time, and I probably need to give you more attention. But here's the thing that you're missing. Sometimes it just doesn't feel like there's any utility in it. It doesn't feel like it goes anywhere. Now that's good. So now your partner says, instead of them saying, what do you mean? I don't diminish. No, the rules are you must agree first. Agree to agree first. So the first thing your partner has to say is, yes, sometimes I am critical of you. Yeah, and I can see how I diminish you sometimes in the ways that I talk. It sounds like I make you feel really discouraged. Because, man, when you're really into this thing, you understand what your partner's saying, right? So you say, yeah, I make you feel discouraged. So you might even say sorry for that, or you might say, I'm not going to change, because that's typically what happens is once you really hear what's going on between each other, you guys both start to agree to change course. Now, wait a minute. You may not agree. You may not find the thing that you can agree with. Now you say, Dr. P, what about when I don't agree? So then here's the thing. When you don't agree, it's not your time to disprove their point. It's your time to become truly curious. Now, I feel like there's two types of questions. There's a type of question that is trying to make a point, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Well, then why did you, it usually sounds something like that. It has like that tone. Then why did you, because it's not really asking a question. It's trying to kind of convict me, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? The questions that aren't questions, they're interrogation type. They got that nasty feel to them. Like you feel nervous just even trying to answer the question. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So you can ask a question that way, and that does not reflect curiosity. It's a question that reflects judgment. What I'm asking you to do is truly be curious. Really want to know, what are they saying there that you just can't agree? You can't hear it. You don't understand. So you ask them to elaborate truly and humbly. Well, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean that I don't spend time with you? Like, what do you mean? Because in your head, you're like, I spend plenty of time, right? I don't agree with that. So you just say, tell me more. Like, what do you mean? And they'll say, yeah, I get home and you never, you go right into your office. You get home from work. You don't, you give me a kiss and then you go on for another hour. You're on the computer. You're constantly, like they start giving you points. And then you say, oh, I see what you mean. Right? Well, and then the great thing about it is the conversation. You don't have to stop there. You can say, I agree. I do go on my phone. And you know what? I do avoid you sometimes, I think. And then you tell them the part that they're missing. Ready for this, folks? So you'll say something like, the reason why I do that is because sometimes I'm so exhausted from my day. My mind is just done and I just want to detach. And the first thing that you want to talk about is the business of the family. And I just don't have the space for it. Yeah, that's a real thing, right? That happens. And so your partner is now learning as they're talking. They feel heard. Oh my gosh. How important is it to feel heard? Right? Man, ever watch the Avatar? And the Avatar, it says at the end, he says, I see you. That was like the whole thing. Is that beyond the avatar, beyond, like you see the being. There's no greater feeling when a person feels truly received, truly heard, because at that moment they feel like you see them. So important. Yeah. I encourage you to make it your goal to see your partner See them as you haven't maybe seen them in a while. Really get curious. Who are you dealing with there at your house? Who's laying next to you, right? You know what I mean? Get really curious. Drop the defensive act. Let go of the resume of disappointment because, man, it does not serve you to hold on to it. You're clinging to that history of yours, the ways that she or she has made mistakes, and your expectations are so set that, man, you have no room for an opportunity for them to be different. Let me tell you something else, and this is big, and we can go aside for a second. I'm here to just talk. First of all, my name is Dr. Pete. You're tripping with Dr. Pete. Boy, does it feel good to be on here. First of all, I got to ask you a favor. Can you just follow me? Because I'd love for you to come back again. I want you to know when I'm on, because I'm going to do some good shows. I'm going to give you guys some good content. I want this podcast to resonate with people. I want them to feel it, to grow. I want them to use the content to make more of themselves, to make more of them relationships. And I want to have some fun along the way. I'm going to bring in some folks I know that are funny, that make me laugh anyway. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to chill out. We're going to have a good time. Remember this, and this is really important. When your ego is at the center of your love is diminished significantly. You have to reduce the ego. I talked about that in my vows just recently when I told I know enough now about marriage. I feel bad about my first marriage. I was thinking about this because I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. I was only 28 years old. I fucked that thing up, man. I really had no idea. Because I didn't know what it took to be. I had so much ego, so much insecurity really manifesting itself and kind of like, really clouding my vision, all that ego stuff. No good. Yeah. Take ego out of the relationship. When you take the I out of it, you get focused on the we. And anytime you focus on the I, you diminish the we. That's a very powerful concept. When you agree to agree, what you're saying is our agreement, our harmony, our love is more important than me being right. I will agree to agree rather than I have to make this about me being right or you being wrong. I want to find the thing that we can build on, the understanding that we can build our conversation on. It's so important, folks. Agree to agree. Here's the thing, right? And this is what helps people to remember agree to agree. Your partner's not absolutely crazy. Maybe some of your partners are. Trust me, I know what you mean, right? You're like, wait a minute, you don't know this person, right? You don't know this person is my friend. You don't know this friend of mine. It's absolutely nuts. Yeah, maybe, right? If you look at the essence of life as growth and the essence of relationship as growth, then you're curious to hear what your partner has and how they're going to feed you and what they can have to make more of you. It's going to be important. So agreeing to agree will help set up the stage to reduce the defensiveness, to increase the understanding, to reduce the ego, and to put it about and really create a story that builds on each other, right? Because you agree, and then you let them know what they may be missing, the part that's in their rear view. That's that they just kind of like they can't. It's in their blind spot, right? You want to be able to give your partner the blind spot, and so you share that piece. Then they do the same thing for you. You go back and forth, and boy, I tell you what, it really does help. And you have to kind of also figure out what's really important. This is another little tip here. Now we're going into a little bit of a different area, but it's important for a difficult conversation. You have to kind of know, like, what's what's your priority here? And you have to ask yourself, why would it ever be my priority to be right? Why would that ever be my priority? I know you want to have right perspective. If you think about it, it is true. The dissonance that gets created with being wrong is sometimes so comfortable and reflective of a life where in even growing up, being wrong is so bad, right? You're wrong on a test, you get an X. You remember that big red X? Nobody wants a big red X in life. You don't want to be wrong. So you do things to distort reality to be right. Not good, folks. Not good. Set out to seek the truth, Invite deep dialogue. sometimes you might just have to listen and just let them fully get it out. One of the things I've been really working on, I'm obviously a talker. I'm obviously the talker. And my partner, she's a talker too. I realize that. I feel really humbled sometimes when I'm able to be quiet enough for her to get on a roll, because she's an introvert. Introverts, boy, you don't have to do much for them to shut down. I gotta say, some people, you don't have to call them introverts, whatever it is. You don't have to do a lot for them, right? So you have to know your audience, and if your partner, is not one that's going to kind of, fight for the floor, you got to make sure that you do a good job of shutting up. Is that super simple? I think it is. Maybe it's over simple, but yeah, you got to know when to shut up. I asked this whole couple. They were together for like 32 years. And I asked them, because I've been a therapist for a long time. So I'm always curious. I'm working with patients, couples. And so I asked them, I said, so what's the key to marriage? What's the key to a healthy marriage? And you know what the guy said to me? And he said, he looked me straight in the face. They're married 32 years, something like that. He says, you got to know when to shut up. Not just you, her too. She's got to know, but you both you got to know what's your priority here. When do you stop? Now, in therapy, we call that a timeout, right? I don't know if many of you have been in therapy, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the tools that your therapist will give you, and you got to think about it like a relational tool belt. And in my podcast, I'll give you plenty to put in your relational tool belt that you kind of like pull out like Batman. Remember when Batman was like, if I could just reach for the, right? And then he would like hit the little device on his utility belt. And then he'd be like, all right, you know what I'm talking about? Right? Like they escape. If I could just reach this utility belt. By the way, that was an excellent impression of Adam West. If he could just reach the utility belt, then I'll get out of this argument. That's it. So one of the things on your utility belt for relationship, for communication, is timeout. Don't take it personal, folks. Nothing is happening once the emotions escalate. In fact, the way that emotions work, as emotions rise, cognitions are restricted. Cognitive ability, your ability to think is limited. It's diminished. It just works kind of inversely that way. So the more emotional, angry you are, you kind of change parts of the brain. You go from using your executive functioning part of your brain to your feeling or amygdala, your center, your primitive brain. No good. No good. So in those moments, to breathe, to take a timeout, it's highly effective. Highly effective. And here's the thing, folks. Sometimes there's two things to avoid. One, we talked about in the beginning of this conversation. Don't let the timeout become stonewalling. Not good. Not good. Don't let it become and to drag into a forever thing, right? It's not like you take a timeout and then you're timed out for like the next. No, that's not good. But at the same time, just because the person took a timeout and you're not ready to take a timeout, like you got to kind of respect it, folks. They threw the flag. They gave you the whole, the old T, the old T from like with football, like timeout, right? Like it doesn't matter how much you want to play, how much you want to rip their head off at this point. It's not going anywhere. And somebody has to have the good sense to know that it's not going to get any better from having this highly emotional conversation. Throw the flag, folks. Yeah, timeout. Now, when you guys understand, now the thing is, whoever calls the timeout is also responsible for returning back to the conversation. Like, just because we had a timeout doesn't mean now we like go and act like this conversation doesn't need to be finished. It's just about de-escalating and coming back at it again. And now here's the thing. If you come back at it again, then you might have to say, listen, let's take a timeout again because it doesn't look like we're getting some resolve. Let's sleep on it. Maybe we need to even go get counseling. I know this great doctor, psychologist, Dr. Pete. Let me call him up. Let me get on his show and see what's up. It's good to have you guys. What's up? I'm Dr. Pete. It's good to have you hanging out here. We're talking about conversation, communication, relationship. I'm giving you some real important pointers here for how to improve your relationship, and really with the focus on communication. There's so many domains of relationship. There's finance, there's recreation, there's communication, there's sex. We're going to talk about it all in our podcast. Not tonight. Tonight, we're just talking about communication, which I think is like the umbrella domain, right? Because everything falls under communication. If you're having bad sex, you got to be able to talk about it. Your finances are fucked up. You got to be able to talk about it. And so what we're talking about here is how to have the difficult conversations. And so I implore you to take away a couple things here. One, I've given you, I've said, agree to agree. Whew. Reduce the ego, the I, and make sure you sacrifice the I for the we. Remember, having a clearing conversation, making sure, is this a good time to talk? Because I need to get something out, right? Checking in on the timing. I've given you that. I told you to replace the judgment with curiosity. Remember that? Curiosity is the most important thing you can do. Let go of your need to be right and trust in your partner that they have some valuable perspective that will add to you. Trust them. You've got to trust them. And if you can't, if you feel like you're in a relationship where that person is truly untrustworthy, like the gaslighters, you know what I mean? They make you think you're crazy. Or the people who are trying to diminish you, they're critical, they're abusive. Get out. I told you that. I don't care. I don't know why therapists, there are a lot of therapists are punks. They just won't tell you that you need to get a divorce. You need to get a divorce sometimes, or a breakup, or whatever you want to call it. Like, hey, sometimes you're like, it's not okay. You're not in it for each other anymore. You're hurting each other. Stop the shit. It's not good. I wish somebody would have, I remember going into therapy. I really do. I remember going into therapy, and I remember thinking, I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember thinking, I'm here to get divorced. We had been really hurtful to each other, and it was really bad. And it was at the point where I was like, I just need us. I knew enough as a therapist. Like, when there's a point when you need to break up, and you need to do it as healthy as possible. Like, I want to just get out, And I went to therapy, and the therapist would not do it. And so it made it look like I was crazy. Like, I'm the one trying to get out of this relationship, and the therapist is like, let's work. I'm like, no, you don't understand. We're at the checkout point. This is it. I need help in letting us check out without it being more hurtful. I want to give you guys a piece, and then we can talk about this on another talk. And I hope you'll hang out and come out and visit me again. This has been great. This has been a great podcast. But if you know, I got to tell you something. When it's over, it's definitely over, and you can feel it because it's become very toxic, and I mean hurtful. It diminishes your being. You don't trust the other person, and I mean not at all. You don't think that they have anything for you. Why would you live with that person? You're better off with a roommate that you like to talk to, that you don't even, have no relationship with. You're better with a stranger than somebody you almost have come to hate. And before you get to that hate point, because there is that cliff, man, when you get to that cliff point, or the hate cliff, it's like you fell off the relationship. You fall into love. There's that falling out of love. You know what I'm talking about? Because I'll tell you, when you fall out of love, it is horrible. It's like being in an emotional dungeon because you're like stuck there with that person. And they don't even have to be in the same room. They could be like, you could be downstairs, they could be upstairs, and you feel the tension. And the fact that you have to walk by each other, that moment, you're not talking and there's this negative energy between you. Oh my gosh. It's like you're committing to a life of little traumas like that. Ugh. I hated that dungeon. If somebody knows what I'm talking about, when they feel more lonely in a relationship than if they were to be by themselves. You know what I think it's all about? Because when you're in that spot in a relationship, right? You actually can't leave, right? You can't just, you're in a relationship, so you can't just be like, I'm going out and just go out and go party and go have fun. And you're like, I have responsibility. I have to come home. That's the least of what is supposed to happen here. Sometimes that doesn't even happen, right? But I'm going to come home. And so now you get stuck at home because you can't be out in the streets. You're married or you're in a relationship or whatever, right? And you're stuck with somebody that, you're not even really talking to, and you really don't trust enough to love. Freud says when we're in love, we're most vulnerable. It's extremely scary. You've let the person totally in. And so here's the thing. If your trust diminishes, if you're not willing to be vulnerable anymore, which is sometimes smart, the love becomes diminished. It becomes lessened. What I'm saying to you, and this is important, right? You try all these things. You try to make it better. You really do. You give it 100%. You only be your best self. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. But when you feel like you've given it all, your all, and it's been, the love is turned into pain and only pain, it's time to get out before, and try to get out with a little bit of love that's left. Try to get out in a way that is still protective of the thing that you tried to make. Protective of the family, maybe the kids, maybe. Protective of that little bit of respect that you have for each other so you can maybe one day talk. Just kind of say, we tried here. It didn't work. I do love you still. But this is not healthy for either one of us. That's not the point of life, folks. You weren't born to be in a miserable relationship. Somebody needs to hear that today. I want to tell you that. Now, that doesn't mean it's not time to go to work, because I'll follow up. If you can leave your relationship, I want to say this last thing about ending a relationship. If you can, and we'll do a whole show on that. If you can leave your relationship with a little bit of love, right? Then you can kind of take care of each other on the way out. You can be kind. You don't have to resent them for staying there beyond, for traumatizing you more, for hurting you in ways, and you'll actually be better set up for loving again. Man, that was so important just there. I really hope you took that in. I'm going to do some shows. I'm going to bring you guys some stuff, and I promise you, you're going to learn something from hanging out. You're going to grow in some type of way. This is not therapy or a substitute for therapy. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, we were talking about coming to an end of a relationship. We were talking about communication. We've talked about so much in this conversation. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to talk before you, like filters you should use, questions you should ask yourself before you start to kind of respond. Remember, your point here, what I've given you is to agree to agree. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. And if you missed any part of this podcast, go back and listen to it. You'll learn some things here that I promise you will help you with your relationship. But the first thing that comes to your mind is typically not the best thing to say. I know you know that. You know what I mean? I know you know that. But I need you to know, like, you might want to think about that first thing. And just ask you, does this need to be filtered a little bit? I'm really good at that one. You know what I mean? Like I do it quick. I guess it's my job, whatever. But here's some easy ways to kind of help you. And I want you to write this stuff down, because it's helpful. Now there's some means I'll try to put on. If you follow me at Ask Dr. Pete on Instagram, I'll post some different information points so you guys can have some stuff to follow and learn from our talk. I won't make you write down everything, but if you get a little journal here. I believe, hey man, those who are serious about learning, there's two types of people. There's the type of person who they have to figure it out themselves, and then there's the type of person who they can take, they can listen to something, learn from it, grow, and go ahead and change their whole world. I'm hoping you're the latter. So I want to give you this, and the first thing that comes to your mind, ask yourself, does it need to be addressed at all? What kind of intention do you have here? Are you trying to hurt? Are you going to hurt the other person? Is that what you're trying to do? Like, what's your intention? And a lot of you would immediately say, no, I'm not trying to hurt. Well, then you got to maybe change how you say it if you're not trying to hurt, right? Because, people have feelings. Now, the other thing that I struggle with, this is my hardest one. This is in terms of, now we're talking about things that filters to use before talking. One of the things I really struggle with is choice, right? Like, I really kind of say, does this need to be said? I remember this mentor told me, because I used to talk all the time in graduate, and when I was a professor, young professors are supposed to be seen, not heard. I'm like, fuck that. No way. I thought everything I needed to say needed to be heard. So I, went off. When you learn over time, that's not true. You don't need to say everything you're thinking. Not everything. And not everything needs to be said right then, right? Timing is everything, right? So you ask yourself, is this something that needs to be said? And if it does need to be said, in your heart it's burning, and you've been really trying to figure out how to say it, you might even say that, say, I really need to talk to you about it, but it's something very difficult to talk about. I want to have a clearing conversation like we talked about before. But I kind of, I'm going to try my best to say this in a way, and if it hurts you, let me know. That's a good way to kind of get in there and start. Now, one of the things is your statement, and do you have compassion compassion is so important. I can go on and on and on about it. I understand, and I define compassion as your ability to empathize with what's going on with the other person and wanting them to feel better. It's not just empathy, but it's empathy with a desire to make things better for the other person. You can empathize with their struggle, but you want to also make it better. You don't want them to hurt. You don't want them to be in pain. Are you being compassionate in your approach? So, and then lastly, I think the other things to ask yourself, is this empathetic? Can I see their point of view? You have to ask yourself, is what I'm about to say respectful? How would I feel if somebody said this to me? Would I respond well if it was said to me? So you ask yourself these type of questions, and you kind of do a little bit of filtering, but here's the other thing. If you're in love and you get into a bumpy space, it's like the tango. You tango up and tango on. You know what I'm saying? You kind of get it together and just do this dance of communication where, there's moments where you're going to feel a little bit hurt. Pay attention. Look at the expressions on your partner's face. You can see when they've been hurt. And you say, hey, listen, I didn't mean to hurt you there. Do you know how far that goes? When you're constantly renewing the notion that you love each other throughout the conversation, do you know how big that is for a person to really listen to what you have to say? It's huge. You're constantly returning to the love. Then now the conversation, you have love front and center to a very difficult conversation. Hey, I know this is hard to hear, but I love you. And I just, this is in the way. And I just need you to hear this. Man, that's a warm up right there. That's a nice little intro. They're getting upset. You can see them getting upset. Babe, don't get upset. That's not what I'm not trying to hurt you. You tell them your intention. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need you to know what's going on here. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I got to tell you, there's been so many difficult conversations that have gone well, but there's been some difficult conversations that go bad. And I've given you some tips before, even like timeouts and so forth. These are things you have to do to kind of make sure that you take a little bit of space to make sure that it's okay. Because sometimes conversations go really bad. And then you kind of have to be able to really kind of read, how they say, read the room, read your partner. Now, if your partner, this is a conversation about conversing, you have to say, babe, I wanted to talk to you because every time there's a lot of times I have some things that I want to say to you, but every time I try to tell you something maybe that you don't want to hear, you get very defensive. And I feel like, do I have to say it differently? Because I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you to be defensive, but I do need you to hear me. I need you to understand this thing because I feel like we're missing it here. We're missing each other. Yeah. Yep. It's really good. I'll tell you this. When you start to get good communication going, and sometimes you have to set some time for it. Like you have to say, I think if there was one major plus of being in therapy with a good therapist, and I say that's important because not every therapist is a good therapist. I'm just saying, I don't give a shit. And not every therapist is a good therapist. Because, so I'm a licensed psychologist, right? I went to school. I did my doctorate at Columbia University. I was a professor at Rutgers. I spent a lot of time studying, man. I was in school for 12 years after high school. That's a long time. So, I come to the table, my relationship, I knew it. I was ready. I taught, about relationships, taught about, marriage counseling in grad school. I taught at a graduate school of education. And I said, I'm going to be able to do this easy when it comes to game. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So I needed help. Right. And even if I did know what I was doing, my partner was not trusting me anymore. She felt like I was really trying to whatever I had to say was now controlling, and it was, you know what I'm saying? Like once trust is gone, it doesn't even matter if you're saying the right thing anymore. The communication is shot. So sometimes, folks, you need a third party. Somebody who's neutral and really invested in seeing that this relationship will go into a better space. And so I say, don't be scared to go and find a good couples therapist. And let me tell you, and don't be lazy in it. Just because the first guy didn't work out or the first woman that you didn't like her, get rid of her. Don't, sit for a couple sessions. You can feel it's growing. Let me tell you the worst thing that happened. I remember when I went to couples therapy, the worst thing that would happen is the couples therapist would sit really passively. I fucking hated that. I hate when therapists just sit there and go, yes, tell me about, I hate that shit. Because I know I'm a therapist. You don't have to do that. You can be more engaged. It's an opportunity for them to learn, to talk, to express, to be heard, to be valued. There's a whole bunch of things that go on, but learning is definitely a part of it, especially early on. And so my thinking is, right, when I went to couples therapy, we needed to learn how to be better communicators. Like we needed some teaching, some direction. We'd go into therapy and we'd come out arguing worse. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody ever have that fucking experience? You go into couples therapy and now you're arguing worse than when you get, you come out, how many times? And I tell my couples, I said, here's the rules. You leave here. We had a difficult conversation here today. You leave here. You're not allowed to talk about anything related to this conversation today because this is really sore and it will only go bad. You barely could do it with me. You will not do it well without me. I tell them that. That's straight up. Like, promise me, you will not try to have this conversation on your own. You're not ready. The skills haven't been developed, and it does take skills to have really difficult conversations. So they, sometimes they listen because, again, I find there's two types of people. There's the people who you tell them and they do it, and then there's the people who just got to do it their own way and then burn the fuck up. That's really what the hell happens. And so when these people do that, so they go. I went in there and we went to therapy, and we were fighting worse. We'd be in the car arguing about what was said, and I'm like, this is not working. We feel crushed after therapy, exhausted, drained, like dragged over the coals. I was like, yo, it wasn't working. And the therapist was so passive. I remember one week, this really egregious thing happened during the week. And I was like, I can't wait to go into therapy. I'm finally, it's not going to be a passive, we're both right thing. This thing happened. It's so egregious. I get to say, she did it. Somebody, you're going to have to confront this thing. I know it was going to happen. I said, he's going to definitely say something. This is going to be great. And in that moment, he starts going, how did that make you feel? I go, it made me feel hurt, but can you tell her something? Like, what are you going to say? Like, this is not okay, right? He never did it. He just got quiet. I said, well, what do you think? What do you, like all this garbage, right? I was livid. I just got up, folks, and left. I was like, you know what? And before I left, I told him, I said, you know what? I know. And then I left. I was like, I said, you're going to let her get away with that? We got into a big thing. I left. I stormed out, which was bad. I guess, I don't know. I felt like it was necessary. And I called him and I told him, I said, obviously we're done, with therapy, but I want to tell you something. This for you may have been another billable hour, maybe you just made some money here, but this was my family on the line. I had a little baby at the time. She was about 3 years old. We needed this to work. And you just kind of just sat there. You didn't do anything for us. It was horrible. I was like, you're making things worse with your approach. You don't know what you're doing, is what I told him. And I told him, I said, let me tell you something. If you were in my course, I said, I don't know exactly where you got your degree, but if I was your professor, you wouldn't make it out of my intro course, bro. You don't know what you're doing. This is bad. You need to stop doing this. That's what I told him. That's what I told him. Because for him, it just was a moment. For me, this is my life. This is the future of my marriage, and we're coming to you as our last effort. And so I share this story with you because two things. One, don't stay in therapy with a therapist that's not working. Trust there is a therapist that will be able to be an asset, and you can't be lazy in seeking. In the Bible, it says, seek and ye shall find. Guess what? The finding is left to the seekers. You got to be a seeker. Get out there. And I don't care if there's not a lot. Go find. I don't care if you have to pay some money out of your pocket, because let me tell you something. Whatever you have to pay, it'll be worth it if it saves your marriage. Not just because of money, because money's nothing, but because you will be able to keep your family whole, and that's meaningful. Yeah. Go to workshops, folks. Work on yourselves as couples. Go to work. Become a student of how to communicate. This is Dr. Pete, and you've been tripping with Dr. Pete. For the full show, please listen to us live on stereo, or you can listen to playbacks on YouTube, Anchor, and Spotify. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, huh? Peace.